I think there's a misremembering of the history of COVID. And I want to ask you about a couple of things. So one of them is lockdowns. Now, my understanding, you tell me if I'm wrong, and this comes from reading some reporting that lockdowns were kind of initially tried in the United States during the flu pandemic of the early 20th century, and they were sort of assumed that the lockdowns were a mistake. They didn't solve the problems. But then we got computer modeling in the late 20th century that said, no, actually, if you had shut down earlier and done a total shutdown, lockdowns would have worked. And so by the time COVID hit, those who were familiar with those models were advocating for lockdowns for that reason. But my understanding is it's not, you tell me, my understanding is that it's not the lockdowns, quote unquote, didn't work. It's that we never actually did lockdowns. You can't have some states locked down, some not. You can't have frontline workers and some hospitals open, but others not. You can't have international travel. Those are not lockdowns. So I have that right, or what would you say about that?
I mean, I'm not an expert, but I think we share the memory there where it wasn't a complete and utter lockdown. And there were always subsets of the population that were unable or unwilling to be restricted. So.
Yeah, and then it became a weird culture war issue, because if you did a lockdown and it worked, presumably it'd be a handful of weeks, but instead, months, years later, some are locking down, some are not. It became like a culture war show, right?
Yeah, and I mean, masking as well. So that was a big issue where a lot of folks said, there's no evidence that masks work. And that became, I think that links back to evidence-based practice, where there wasn't a randomized controlled trial that evaluated mask use, but it really wouldn't make sense that there would be a randomized controlled trial. If there's an airborne pathogen, people wear a mask because it would be unethical to run a trial without masks if there is a known airborne pathogen. But there wasn't a study. So
yeah, and so this brings me to another area that I was interested to talk to you about. And I should say at the outset that I'm someone who was supportive of a lot of the COVID response in a lot of ways. So this is not coming from someone who rejects everything, but I did have some criticisms. And one person in particular I want to talk about is Anthony Fauci, because I think Fauci would often give policy proposals to the public and then introduce them as science. And I think in the long run, that did problems for the scientific community. And what I'm talking about specifically is early on in the pandemic, he said something about how you didn't need to wear masks. And then later on, he said you do need to wear masks. And he admitted he lied the first time because he was worried about running out of PPE. Or when he was out in 2021, going out to Black communities to get more folks to accept the vaccine, PBS recorded him telling people that they would have no symptoms if they took it. And then that changed. As someone who was vaxxed twice and had COVID 3 times, I can tell you there's symptoms.
Well, I heard that it doesn't cure it, and it doesn't stop you from getting it.
No,
so
on the very, very, very rare chance that you do get it, even if you're vaccinated, you don't even feel sick. It's like you don't even know you got infected.
So what do you make of that distinction? Because I do think some of the critics of science, in air quotes, I think they're really criticizing folks like Fauci, who are policymakers that kind of establish themselves in the scientific community, where real scientists I talked to had more nuanced views. I remember one I spoke to said, yeah, there's always some, side effects for a tiny percent with any vaccine, but it's going to look larger because we've never had this many millions of people take a vaccine all at once. So scientists were saying stuff like that to me, but then the dogma from media was, no, don't question it. It's 100% safe. There's no issues, no complications. And I think in the long run, that narrative hurt the scientific community.
Hey, detoxers. We hope you enjoyed that clip. If you want to check out more, you can find full episodes and other clips on YouTube, as well as on all the major podcast platforms, and of course, by subscribing on Substack at nolanhigdon.substack.com. Don't forget to like, follow, and subscribe. It really helps us out and it keeps those tech overlords happy. See you next time. Detox complete.